Good day, fellow moto enthusiasts. Twin Cities Rider here, doing another motorcycle review. This time it is a 2007 V-Strom 1000 that I currently own. So, what the heck is a V-Strom 1000? It's also called the DL1000 or V-Strom 1000. I looked it up. V-Strom actually means, well, the Strom part of it means current or stream. I guess it's a German word, so I don't know why the Japanese came up with that. And then the V is because it has a V-twin engine derived from the TL1000. It's like a Ducati knockoff, basically, 90-degree V-twin. It's originally marketed as a sport touring enduro. I'm guessing that term is from before adventure riding being a thing. But that's essentially what it is. It's an older adventure bike. It's been updated throughout the years. They still make the V-Strom. The current versions have a lot of additional features, which are pretty nice. You know, it's really come a long way with tasteful upgrades. They didn't ever really do a full redesign, but they've kind of kept tacking on little bits and pieces of technology over the years. So, anyways, so why did I buy this thing? Well, KLR was a great bike, but I was looking for something that could handle some two-up touring with a lot of luggage easily, where I can book across the Dakotas and just not think twice about it. So that was one of my criteria. Oh, I got my cat here, causing difficulty in this recording. Anyways, so I just wanted a bigger bike to make sure that that long distance travel was just very straightforward and comfortable. The other thing is, I was looking for something that was cheap and reliable. If I wanted a brand new KTM 1090 Adventure, I would definitely be paying more money than I want to for a bike that I potentially might drop off-road. So I was looking at older adventure bikes and seeing what came up and met my other criteria. Other thing I wanted was a street-leaning adventure bike. So I had a KLR 650 and a DRZ 400, which kind of overlapped themselves in function. So I was kind of looking for something that more took care of the street end of things, and my DRZ can handle the dirt end of things. So that's kind of how I came to want a more street-oriented adventure bike, which the V-Strom is. It's got some features that kind of limit its off-road ability, as well as some features that really enhance its on-road ability. So it's probably like a 90-10 adventure bike, 90% street, 10% off-road. And that kind of goes on to the next thing. There are a couple things that made me hesitate buying this bike. Poor ground clearance and the oil filter being exposed and vulnerable to damage definitely made me hesitate. I like my bikes to be fairly resistant to damage, and I kind of saw right away that the ground clearance was a bit of an issue. Although I do have to say it's not as bad as it was made out to be. The oil filter being exposed on the 1000 model, they come with this plastic cowl that kind of covers it up, and it actually does a pretty good job of deflecting small rocks and road debris getting kicked up. So I really haven't seen even much warrant for concern in that department. Where the limitation is, though, is I would not bring this motorcycle on baby head rocks or over a tree branch or some shelf where I think I might bottom it out. It could be very bad, unless I had a skid plate, which I'll probably eventually upgrade to. The other thing that made me hesitate was I've heard it has soft suspension. I'd actually disagree with that, and I'll go into that a little bit later when I'm breaking down the bike by systems. And then lastly, the looks. It's kind of polarizing looks. Some people like it, some people don't. Initially I thought it looked like a freaking boat of some sort, but in person it wasn't too bad. When I went to see it for the first time, I was actually pleasantly surprised. It looked like a lot nicer bike than I imagined it would be, given the looks weren't really, you know, a make or break thing for me. Function's a little bit more important, but now I've actually kind of started to like it, and when I put the crash bars on, I do like the looks of it now, with those crash bars kind of adding more to its rugged off-road look. So, what have I done with it to be able to do this review? Well, the biggest thing is probably a 3,000 mile tour, 2 up with luggage from Minnesota to Colorado and back. did a little bit of off-roading, not a whole lot, but some, to get an idea. And then in addition to that, I've been daily commuting with this. This is how I get to and from work all summer. I've done a handful of weekend camping trips with this bike, 2-up, and it's worked fabulously. And I have put a total of 10,000 miles on it through these combination of different ridings I've done with it. So what do I think of it now? It's a great blend of a sport bike and a touring bike. Surprisingly easy to ride off-road. It's limited in ground clearance for sure. That never got better. It never went away, and I'm not going to say it's not a problem with this bike. It could use more ground clearance, but it's kind of the sacrifice you make to have it be a little bit better of a street bike. And it was never, I doubt they really intended this to be a trail bike by any means. And overall, I just think it's a good bike to live with. But I'll do a little breakdown here, just cover my thoughts on the various bits and pieces of the bike. Overall, just talking dimensions and body and the bike itself. Dimensionally, it's huge. I mean, it's a big bike. It's long, it's tall, it's got a higher seat height if inseam is an issue for anybody. That being said though, it's very light. When I did the valve inspection, I really noticed this, that once you take the fairing away and all the other bits and pieces, and if you can kind of take the subframe off mentally, there's not a whole lot to this bike. It's a fairly straightforward, slimmed down frame. The engine's a stress member. So the actual meat and potatoes of this bike are pretty small, and I think that's how they got it to be the weight it is, which is just a touch over 500 pounds, which is pretty impressive for a 1000cc adventure bike. Continuing on comfort-wise, I mean, it's a comfortable bike. I feel great on it. It's not gold wing comfy. It does put you into a bit of a sporting position, so you're kind of, you know, you're in a neutral position, but leaning towards the forward sporting position. Although it's not hard to transition styles from off-road to on-road with this bike. Handlebars are in a fantastic position. I really like that. The foot pegs being back, yeah, my knees get a little sore after a while riding on this thing. Nothing like a sport bike though. Doesn't even come close to, you know, the discomfort that you can get from having your knees in that full tuck position. But it's there. Overall though, very comfortable. Wind protection's really good. The only dent in the wind protection is your legs get it. There's not really much to protect wind from hitting your legs, so if you are riding in colder temperatures, that's where you're going to feel it for sure on this bike. And that's about it for the bike's body itself. Another piece is the engine. So this engine, think mid-range awesomeness, and it's got some top end too, so it gets kind of shaky. The bike seems like a nuclear reactor powering up. I don't know if nuclear reactors actually shake, they probably shouldn't, but this thing goes a little crazy when you rev the crap out of it. There is power up there, but it's kind of diminishing returns towards the very end, I've found. I think it's easier just to ride this bike in the middle range, but yeah, it's got a pretty good rev range. Oddly enough though, for a bike that is touted as being a torque monster, it really can't be lugged easily. It doesn't like life below 3,000 RPM. One thing I actually did with mine too is I geared it down, and I feel like that improved the bike a lot. But yeah, it doesn't like being lugged, lives happiest in the middle. Has top end, but it's not always intuitive to use the top end, or it doesn't really draw you to dip into that top end power. Another thing with it too is, yes, it's a big powerful engine, very strong engine, no underpower issues whatsoever with this bike, but it's not like a sporty engine, not like a super sport or something like that. It's going to be relaxed but powerful is how I describe this. And then finally, reliability. I've heard this bike is very reliable. For me on these 10,000 miles, I haven't had any issues working on it. All the parts seem solid and good. relatively easy to work on too. The fairings are a bit of a pain to get off and such. Not that it's overly difficult, but there's just a lot of steps. So valve inspection, for example, I had to take off the radiator, a lot of the fairings and stuff like that. So that was the most time-consuming portion of that process. But at the same time, it was just a lot of work. It wasn't overly difficult at any one point. They got these nice gear-driven cams, so you don't have to mess with the cam chain tensioner at all. You just pull the cams out, do your adjustment, pop them back in. So I did like that about it. Moving on to suspension. Suspension, it's good. It's just not great. I've heard of it being soft. I don't know if I agree with that. I got my sag set perfectly with still being, you know, well within the adjustment range. And yeah, overall, I think it's pretty good. If the suspension were to get an A+, I think it would need some more compression damping, but even though this is an older bike and there have been improvements since, I would say it had fairly premium suspension, you know, for its time, and I think that's still true today. This is better suspension than most of your, you know, more affordable bikes would have by far. So I don't know if this really qualifies for suspension, but I do want to talk about the wheels. It has a 19-inch front wheel, 17-inch rear wheel. I think that's a really good balance if you're looking for a more street-oriented adventure bike. It still tracks pretty nicely off-road, getting into some deeper gravel or looser terrain, but at the same time, that 19-inch front wheel, I feel pretty confident pushing it in the corners and on twisties. I feel like I know where the wheel's at and I have control of it the entire time, whereas you get some 21-inch wheels and it can get a little squirrely, it can be a little hard to get it to turn in. That 19-inch is kind of a nice middle ground. I think that's the same diameter the BMWs and some other big name adventure bikes have, so I do like that about it. And then the adjustments for the suspension, kind of going back to that, pretty easy to do. They get a really nice easy access knob to the rear, and it's just a straight, you know, typical adjustment of the front fork, so pretty straightforward, nice to work with. The brakes, I'm not really even going to talk about the brakes. They're good, but you know, they're unremarkable. There's nothing really special about them. They break. I won't fault them. I've heard pads and steel brake lines can give them a little bit more bite. Maybe that's something I'll do once they've, you know, hit their service limit, but for now I'm happy with them. I don't see any issue with the brakes on this, but I'm not gonna put a gold star on them either. Extra bits, I gotta say this bike has some awesome under the seat storage. I can fit my air compressor, tools, tire patch kits, manual. I oftentimes bring my multimeter with on trips and I can fit that under the seat. It's really nice. I mean, I can keep all my tools out of my panniers and reserve that space for other things and keep the tools under the seat. This is the first bike that I've seen have that much storage capacity under there, so I think that was pretty cool. In addition, everything's just nice and set up. They got labels for all the specs all over the bike, so if you don't have your manual with you, you can remember some you know, specifications and stuff like tire pressure, chain slack. I know most bikes do have that stuff, but they're missing a couple pieces. I feel like this one has all the information you need on the bike as well, which is a good thought. And then overall quality, I mean, it's a nicely built bike, I think. Everything seems solid. It's a little plasticky in some places, but it all fits together well, and I don't think they cheaped out anywhere significantly on this bike. So overall, the big pros, if you're looking at an older V-Strom like this, you're going to get a lot of bike for your money. These engines I've heard of going well into the hundreds of thousands, and not too many people ride their motorcycles that much, so if you find one of these, it's likely got a lot of life left in it. You're not getting the latest and greatest, but you're getting a damn good quality bike and a premium machine at its time. Oh, I got my cat meowing again here. So yeah, very, very good bike. A lot of bang for your buck if you get an older one. Now you do have to consider that the newer you go, the more little features and refinements you're going to get on this bike. The newer models are better, but I have to say they didn't start from a bad place with this older original model. So that's a benefit. A lot of bang for your buck. You won't cry when you drop this thing, and you get a pretty similar ride to a, you know, premium brand new adventure bike that you buy today. I will say this is for the street leaning adventure rider. It's not a 21-inch front wheel. It doesn't have a ton of ground clearance, so do keep that in mind if you have plans to be doing some extreme off-roading. You might want to look at something different, or else have a more off-road oriented bike on the side like I do. But yeah, and then overall it's just versatile. You can use this bike for anything. It's a good commuter, it's a good tourer, it's a good sport bike, it's a good adventure bike. It's exciting, it's fun, but at the same time it's not too ridiculous or uncompromising. So, very good bike. The big cons though are the fuel range. This thing, in my opinion, has crappy fuel range. Maybe it's just the way I ride it, but I feel like it goes through gas way too quick. The range ends up being like 160. I could probably push it more to like 180, 190, but I'd just rather not. It has a big gas tank, but because of that fuel economy, the range just isn't as good as other adventure bikes or, you know, long distance tours. Ground clearance, well, we've hated on this a lot. Like I said, it's not as bad as they make it out to be, but it's a thing, and it limits this bike and what it can do off-road. So that's about all I have to say about the V-Strom 1000. So far it's been a great bike for me. It's checked off a lot of boxes. It's a great vehicle for seeing the country. They're all over the place. You can get them for not a lot of money nowadays. And these older adventure bikes that have depreciated over the years still have a lot of life in them. So definitely when you're out there shopping, do have the used market in mind. The latest and greatest bikes, yes, they have the ads. They look flashy, fresh, new. They have these new technologies that are very nice, admittedly. Cornering ABS, stuff like that. Position monitoring and such. You know, all these are great technologies, no doubt. But I don't know if you're necessarily getting every dollar's worth when you're spending the extra coin to get that brand new bike versus these old ones that I think were pretty damn well made when they were made, and they still hold up to the current competition to a degree. So that's all I got. Twin Cities Rider out.